Hello everyone. Today we'll be starting with lab 9, which is on structures. So what are structures? Structures are basically, you can think of structures as custom made data types. For example, you have integer data type, float data type in C programming language. But if you want to club these data types into one single entity, you'll use a structure for that purpose. So as you can see here, we have combined int data type, float data type, and shelf data type. Shelf, which is an enum here, we have combined these three data types into one single entity, uh, which we have named struct book, so that these three data types now exist as one entity. Also, you must be knowing about enum. It is a one-to-one mapping from like shelf 1 maps to 1, shelf 2 maps to 2, shelf 3 maps to 3, and shelf 4 maps to 4. So if I write shelf 1, that means its value will be taken as 1, or shelf two's value will be taken as 2. Yeah. So now how do you define a structure? You write struct book and open the braces and then write all the data types which you want it to contain. And then you can give it a specific name by using the type def command, and we have given it a name of book. If we wouldn't have used the type def command, then type def keyword, I'm sorry. If we wouldn't have used type def keyword, then we would have to reference this structure by writing struct book everywhere. Instead, now we will just write book. As you can see here, we have just written book here. No need to write struct book as a whole. So we are given a structure of book here, which contains the book ID, the shelf on which the book is kept, and the price of the book. And these are the three data types of the book structure. The shelf is an enum, so we have four shelves, and we have again given we have again used the type def keyword to reference shelf by shelf in block letters so that we won't have to write enum shelf everywhere. Okay, so we have to implement these two functions here. The first function is book new book. So this function should create a new variable of type struct book using the parameters passed to it and return it. And then print book, this function should print the values of the members of book 1 passed as parameter. Okay. So let's head on to the C file. First, we'll implement the new book function. So as you can see, new book returns the data returns a structure. So book was a structure. So first, what we'll do, we'll create a reference of the structure by writing book B1. So as you write int a, you declare a variable a, and then you can assign whatever values you want to it. Similarly, we'll create an instance of this structure by writing book B1, and then we access the members of this member fields of the structure using the dot notation. So we want to set ID to the ID which is passed. So we'll write B1 dot ID is equal to the ID which we have passed in the function. Similarly, B1 dot shelf num is equal to the shelf num which we have passed in the function. And similarly, B1 dot price is equal to the price which we have passed in the function. And then we'll simply return the instance which we have created. So now this function creates a new book and sets all its fields to the fields which we have to the parameters which we have passed in the function, and then we return the new book. Now here the print book function, let's see what should this function do. This function should print the values of the members of book 1 passed as parameter. Okay, so now this function should print all the values. So we just have to simply print all the values of this function. So we'll write printf the id of is %d and book1 dot id. Similarly, we'll print the shelf. The shelf of the book is book1 dot shelf num. So shelf num will return an integer value because it is a one-to-one mapping from the shelf name to an integer. And then the last thing is the price of the book is %f book1 dot price, and we have returned it now. Okay, also let's print that we are printing the details of a book, so that when we are printing the details of other books, then we know that these books are separate. Yeah, so this is done. Now let's move on to books underscore catalog dot h. So this again has, so this has an array of all the books. So it is basically a catalog. The catalog contains an array of all the books. So this is an array of structs. And this count variable here will maintain the count to which we are populating the book. So you will see that we have initialized count to 0 in the main function. So when we first call the add book to catalog method, it should populate book 1 to the 0th index, and then we'll increment the count afterwards. So let's start doing that. So we have our array. So this function add book to catalog, what should it do? It takes the parameter as the book which we want to add, and then we have simply have to add this book to the books catalog array at the position count, and count should be incremented. So this is simple. We'll just write books. What was the name of the array? Books catalog. Books catalog of count is equal to book 1. So this way we have the set the book at index count to book 1, and then we increment the count so that when we call this function further, the next books get populated at the next count indices. Now we want to print the book catalog, which is again simple. So when we have inserted all the books, count will contain the length of our array. So let's say this was our last book, then we'll increment count. So count will now contain the length of the array. So we can use that. So we can use count as the length. We'll iterate through all the books I equal to 0, I less than count, I plus plus. And in order to use this function, It should use the print book function defined in book underscore def.h to print the details of the book. Yeah. So we just have to call that function, which was print book. And what we'll do, we'll just pass the book at index I inside this function. And this should do our job. Now the last thing here is sort book catalog on ID. This function should sort the book's catalog array based on the ID of the book. Okay. So this thing is again similar to the sorting we do on a normal array. Just the comparison factor will become the ID instead of the element present at the array, because it is a struct and we want to compare elements based on their IDs. So we'll iterate through all the elements in the array. Then we'll place the largest element at the last of the array. So j is equal to 0, j less than count minus I minus 1, j plus plus. So we'll start from the 0th index and go on to the last index for the first time, and then we'll place the maximum ID book to the last. Once we have the maximum ID book at the last, then we'll iterate from 0 to count minus 1. Now we'll again find the largest ID and place it at the last. Last means here second last, because the range is now count 0 to count minus 1. Then we'll iterate from 0 to count minus 2 and place the element at the last, which means count minus 2th location, which has the maximum ID. So once we iterate through all the i's, we'll have a sorted array, because we are placing the largest element at the last and reducing the size of the array from the end. So that means the largest element always comes at the end of the array. So for doing that, we'll check two consecutive elements. If books catalog of J is greater than books catalog of J plus 1, not books catalog dot of J dot ID, because we want to compare the IDs. J plus 1 dot ID. Then what do we want to do? We want to swap. So for swapping, we'll have to create a temporary book. So let's declare the temporary here, book temp. So we'll set temp to books catalog of J first. Books catalog of J plus 1. Let's set this to J plus 1. Books catalog of J plus 1 will then become equal to books catalog of J. And now books catalog of J can be set to temp. So I think this should do the functionality. Yeah. So then the last thing which is left is to see the main function. The main function here sets the count equal to 0, as we knew. We initialize the books by calling the new book method, which we defined in book underscore fun.c, and pass in the required parameters. And this returns a book, which we set in here. We create a reference of book and it gets assigned these values. So we create 5 books in this manner. Then we add all these books one by one to the catalog by calling the add book to catalog method, which is here. So it simply takes in the array and adds the book to the required position and increments the count. Then we call the print book catalog method, which prints the books in an unsorted manner, then we call the sort book catalog on ID, which sorts the books based on their IDs, and then we finally print the books. So let's see what happens. We'll so also, yeah, there are multiple files present in this project. So we'll have to individually compile all the files which we are using. So first we'll have to compile GCC. Also, when we have a multi-file project, we have a main function in only one of these files so that the compiler knows which main function to run. So we'll first compile a second. Why am I not able to write in the terminal? Okay, so there was some issue with the terminal earlier. So we'll first create object files for all the individual C files which we are using. So first we'll create the object file for book underscore fun.c. Okay, what are these errors? Okay, so I missed the C flag here. Let's clear this up. GCC minus C book underscore fun.c. Again, there are some errors. What are the errors? Book def.h. Okay, I think this command came in here by mistake. One. Okay, I think this was the only issue. Yeah, so the object file gets created once more. There was a typo here. You can see the object file of book underscore fun gets created. In the same way, we'll have to create the object file for books underscore catalog also. C minus C books underscore catalog dot h dot c, and the object file for this also gets created. Now the last thing, we'll create the object file for main library dot c. This also gets created. Now we'll link all these object files together. GCC minus o, give the name of the exe file, and then write the names of all these object files. Book underscore fun dot o, books underscore catalog dot o, and main underscore library dot o. Okay, so the flag shouldn't contain a space. Yeah. So we get the exe file now. Now let's run this exe file. Yeah. So you can see what were we doing here. First, we were printing the details of the book without calling the sort book method. So we have five books. The first book with ID number 1847 as specified here. The second with 5984, third with 6325, fourth with 5843, and fifth with 7894. Then after this is the last book. All right. You can see here. After this, we called the sort method. Now the book should get printed in the order of sorted IDs. So first we have 1847, then 5843, then 5984, and then 6325, and at the last 7894. So as you can see, this is a sorted order. So you get the desired output here. Also, you'll see that your lab sheet has some things. You have hashtag if and if, with a hash defined book underscore h, hashtag end if. So it is a good practice to include this in multi-file C projects because when you have multiple files and you have to include different header files. Okay, so as you can see that this is the header file of book underscore fun.c. So we have included the header file here because we want to access all these variables which we have declared here. So we want to access the book, the enum, and we have declared the prototypes of these functions also. So we have created the .h file here and we have included this file here. Similarly, we have the .h file for books underscore catalog.c. We have the function prototypes and the array and the count variable here. So while including different files, it may happen that two files contain the same variables and then the C compiler will give that you have redefined some variables or redefined some functions. So this thing is used to prevent multiple inclusions of variables or functions. So it is a good practice to include these guards everywhere so that you can prevent multiple inclusions of the same variable or functions in your files. So for example, if you have a file which which includes a header file and it includes another file which also contains the same header file, then you will have two inclusions of the particular header file. So you will have multiple definitions. So for preventing that, we use these include guards everywhere so that you can prevent multiple inclusions of variables and functions from happening inside your files. Also, let's create a bash file to run all these commands. So we'll save this as myscript.sh. Yeah. And now we'll write all the commands which we wrote in the terminal. gcc minus c book underscore fun.c gcc minus c books underscore catalog dot c, then gcc minus c main underscore library dot c. After that, we'll link all the object files and create the exe file book underscore fun dot o, books underscore catalog dot o, and main underscore library dot o. Okay, this is including other things also. And then finally, we'll run the exe file. Also, first, let's remove all the .o and what is happening here and the exe files before proceeding. We'll save this and let's try to run the bash script. Bash my script.sh, and this will again print the same things. We just have written all the commands at one place. We have removed all the object files and the exe file before running this bash script, and then we have again created the object files and linked all the object files together to produce the desired output. And you can see we have the desired output. First, we have the books printed in an unsorted manner, and then we have the books printed in a sorted manner. Thank you for attending lab 9.